Dear listeners, thank you for all your suggestions. Please drop a hi in the comment section and let us know what you think about today's story. Now let's start with the story. We came to a stop sign. I looked sideways at my wife, Beth. My quick glance was to gauge her mood. We hadn't spoken so far during the car ride. We were on our way to my family's Saturday night dinner. I know, most families have their big dinners on Sunday, but my family was a little different. My father's family had moved to the US from Romania during the time of uncertainty after the Iron Curtain came down. They got out with forged documents in 1988. My father, his two sisters, his parents, and a small assortment of relatives all moved to the US to make a new life. My grandparents, my father, and my aunts all spoke English with an Eastern European accent. When they all got to the US, they decided to live near the Romanian Orthodox Church in our city. The sense of familiarity helped them adjust in a new country. Many like-minded people of Romanian heritage settled in the same neighborhoods. By trade, my family are jewelers. Fortunately, precious gems are easy to transport, and when we fled, we had a lot of capital and inventory. My grandfather is a craftsman on the verge of an artist. My father was more a businessman and worked with our suppliers to get the best stones at the best prices. I followed in my grandfather's inclination and was developing my own more contemporary artistic designs. The name of our business is Stoica Gem Designs. Beth was a good old multi-generation American. I believe at first the exotic foreignness of the Romanians was of interest to Beth, but exotic becomes commonplace with repeated exposure. I think my family bored her. Beth, honey, we don't have to stay too long. I told her. All she said to that was good. Come on, you haven't seen my family in months, it's not that bad. I added, is something bothering you? I asked. Though it had been a few months since Beth had joined my family for Saturday night dinner, I made it almost weekly. This gave Beth a chance to have a girls' night out on recent Saturdays. Beth had been hitting the gym lately and was sculpting her slightly plump body into a solid 9 on the female physique scale. She looked good, and lately, in my opinion, she may have been flaunting it a little too much for a married woman. I'm fine, she replied. Now I agreed to do this. No more questions. Fortunately, we were almost there, so the silence within the car was short-lived. The scene at my parents' house was typical for one of our family dinners. Lots of loud talking, children running around. My mother holding court in the kitchen and Aunt Dina perched in a single chair in the corner, silently appraising all activity. The moment we got there, Beth made a beeline to my cousin's wife, Morgan. One of the few people Beth will talk to at these events. There is a simmering, contemptuous attitude she projects and does not care who sees it. I, on the other hand, am sincerely glad to see my family, and I spend time making the rounds to all the relatives with hugs and brief conversations. Nicholas, my mother asks, can I get your Beth something to eat or drink? I want to make her feel at home. She goes on. My mother's family are also Romanian, but she was born and raised in the US and speaks with no accent. My mom has a big heart, and even though Beth is acting stuck up, my mom wants to know if she can help her in some way. No, Mom, I say. She's fine. She can be a little shy at times. Not specifically truthful, but it ends the conversation about Beth's mood. Aunt Dina, pronounced Dina, is one of my favorites, and I make my way to her perch on a single straight-back chair in the main room. Dina is a singularly unattractive, elderly woman except for her eyes. A shapeless body, gray hair with black streaks pulled back. A severe, angular face with a pronounced nose and a sharp chin. Several moles bespeckle her dark complexion, sprouting black hair. But she has big, beautiful dark eyes. Her eyes seem to be able to see deep inside when she looks at you. Nonetheless, I give her a big hug and a kiss on her cheek. She hugs me extra long. Nico, she says in her heavy accent, what is the matter with your bride? She asks. Deanie, I say, using my pet name. You know how she is, she doesn't like to mingle. She's fine. I go on. I look at Dina, and she's watching Beth with great concentration. Dina, I'm convinced, has some type of psychic powers. More than once she has given me advice that has worked out exactly as she had predicted. Shortly before I proposed to Beth, Dina had warned me about marriage. It created a little tension between us for a short time. Obviously, I disregarded her advice on that occasion. I think there is something wrong, she states as she stares at Beth. There is going to be trouble for you, Nico. You be careful, and you watch that one. She nods towards Beth as she says this. Deanie, I say, everything's fine. Thank you for thinking of me, but you don't need to worry. I give her a hug and a smile as I continue to mingle. As I'm about to move away, she touches my elbow, and I feel an electric sensation like when you hit your funny bone, almost as strong as a shock. It startles me, and I look at Dina. She is staring back at me with her beautiful, deep black eyes. Her index finger is lightly tapping her nose. I'm not exactly sure what all this means, but I feel it is some type of warning. Throughout the evening, I am mildly troubled by my encounter with Aunt Dina. This is accentuated by Beth's coolness to most of my family and to me. Driving home, I know not to question her attitude. I'm still holding out hope for a little sex tonight. It's been a few weeks. What are your plans for tomorrow? I ask her. A safe subject. I will be at the gym from 2 to 5. She states without further comment. I could join you. I haven't been lately, and maybe we can get something to eat afterwards. I think this sounds like a good idea, and I look over to see her reaction. She stares straight ahead and says nothing for perhaps a full minute. I say, Beth? Thinking maybe she didn't hear me or something. Nick, I've got a personal training session tomorrow, and I'm not sure how long it will last. I will just meet you at home for dinner. She says with a forced smile. Now I'm getting a little pissed. She acted like a witch at my parents' house. I tried to create a little togetherness for doing something she likes, the gym, and I get shot down. I am on the verge of saying something about it when all of a sudden her whole attitude and posture change from ice queen to loving wife. I know it may be just an act, but I cling at any hope of the old affectionate Beth. Sorry, honey, she says in all of a sudden a sweet, sexy voice. Maybe we can do that on a different day. She starts rubbing my thigh and is staring at me in her sexiest way. Fortunately, we are on neighborhood streets and I slow way down. Not sure if my auto insurance coverage includes getting in a wreck while receiving a pleasure. Beth, I whisper out. That's all I can get my mind around to say. What's wrong, Nikki? She asks in a sing-song voice. Am I distracting you? Maybe I should stop. And momentarily, she disconnects contact. No. I practically shout. She laughs. At this point, I'm doing no more than 10 miles an hour. Fortunately, we were in the suburbs. About 10% of my brain is focusing on driving, while the rest of it is focused on her. I pull over at a park near the tennis courts. It's dark, and there does not seem to be anyone around. I stop. All of a sudden, I open my door and drag her outside. Nick, what are you? She begins. She's nude except for her shoes at 9:45 in the evening in a public park. After a few moments, we are lit up with a flashlight. I look over my shoulder and hear some retired guy walking his dog. The dog yaps at us. Everything okay here? I heard some noises. He says. Nick, Beth says to me and stops. Everything's fine. I haven't screwed my wife in quite some time, and I'd kind of like to finish if you don't mind. I tell him. No, sir, he says. Mind if I watch? He says. Knock yourself out. I tell him. Nicholas. Beth says and struggles to get up. I keep screwing her, and just to give the guy a real show, Beth hurriedly grabs her clothes and ducks inside the car. You two planning on coming back anytime soon? The old guy hopefully asks. I don't reply. Beth is back to her quiet mood on the way home. Any post-coital glow appears to have dimmed for her. I tell her how great it was to make love to her. Make love, she says. You screwed me. And in front of that old geezer too. What if someone we knew had seen us? She's trying to start a little fight. I'm not taking the bait. I needed her badly and I know a couple of things. Point 1. The whole seduction scene on her part was a way to distract me from the fact that she didn't want me to go to the gym with her for whatever reason. Point 2. I also know that she is exaggerating how embarrassed she was that we were caught having sex. I know there is a part of her that likes it. So for the moment I was satisfied. But I knew full well that it would not take much deep thinking to discover we had some serious problems with our marriage. Beth and I actually went to high school together, but traveled in different crowds. In high school, she was slim and a shapely body. Not a hard body, but very soft and womanly, attracting most of the guys in our high school. She was a cheerleader and hung with the cute girls and the jock guys. The in crowd. I didn't really have a crowd. I wasn't smart or boring enough to be a nerd, but I wasn't a good enough athlete or quite cool enough to be a jock. I was kind of in between. One thing I was infatuated with Beth. She and I had biology together our senior year, and I sat near her. I tried to think up ways to interact with her any way I could. A mediocre student, I focused on biology so I could help Beth with her homework. She accepted my help. We would go to her house and sit at the kitchen counter. These sessions were the highlight of my week. I was so glad to be near her. I barely paid attention to the fact that half the time I was supposedly tutoring her, she was talking on the phone. More times than not, I just did her homework. Towards the end of senior year, we had been getting together to do homework for several months. When I walked by Beth in the school hallways, she would say hello and call me by name. I mistook that friendliness for true affection. I found out abruptly that I had misjudged her affection for me. At the end of lunch period one day, I saw her outside near the front doors. She was for once not with her gang of friends. I thought this would be my chance and walked up to her and asked her if she wanted to get together on Saturday night. She looked at me with a confused expression. Saturday? She asked. I don't study on the weekends. She told me. We could do something other than study. I say. We could see a movie or get something to eat. I tell her with hope in my voice. She just stared at me, searching my eyes to understand the nature of my question. In her mind, we were of two separate castes. My social strata and hers were on different planes. The co-mingling of our popularity was not comprehensible. When she finally processed all this, she merely said, "Sorry, I'm busy," and walked off. I never tutored her again. She never greeted me in the halls again, and it was several years before I ever even saw her after graduation. The week after the dinner at my parents', Beth seemed to accelerate her frequent workout schedule at the gym. We had originally joined the local fitness club together. I had always been lean and not particularly muscular. Beth had gained some weight since high school and was constantly in a battle to shed the excess. I enjoyed the workouts, but more than anything, I just liked us doing something together. Her work schedule changed, and she started going into work early and getting off at 3 p.m. My hours at the family business, Stoica Gym Designs, followed more traditional retail hours. In at 9 a.m., closing at 6 p.m. most of the time. For all intents and purposes, I quit going to the gym. Occasionally, we went together on the weekends, but anyone who had ever spent much time working out knows it takes dedication and discipline. The occasional visit does not work. Before we were married, I had purchased an older house. It needed a lot of repairs and updating, and I spent my free time working on the house. Originally, I thought it was fine that Beth and I had different hobbies. I worked on the house and tried to make it better for her to enjoy, and she worked on her body, all the better for me to enjoy. It worked at first. As time passed, her attitude began to shift. Beth was always a prima donna. My memories of high school and her unofficial membership with the in crowd never quite went away. I treated her like a queen, and she seemed to enjoy my attention. Early in our marriage, it was fun. A game of me worshiping her and both of us laughing about how I would do anything for her. I remember one Saturday night shortly after we were married. It was late, and we had eaten an early dinner. It was about 9:30, and we were on the verge of going to bed, and all of a sudden, she had an intense craving for a strawberry milkshake. "Will you go down to DQ and get me a milkshake, please?" she asked. "Beth, no. I'm in my boxers. I'm getting ready for bed. We can get one tomorrow." I told her. "Please, Nikki, do this for me. I really want a strawberry milkshake," she pleaded, turning on her sexy voice. As I said, I treated her like a queen, but this was ridiculous. If it had been something important, I would have done it. But a strawberry milkshake? Forget it. "Please, Nikki, I'll give you something," she said in a sing-song voice. All of a sudden, I stopped moving towards the bedroom. She agreed, and I drove all the way to Dairy Queen with an excitement. Driving back with the shake, I saw her blessedly nude waiting on the front porch with the overhead light on for all to see. We had a memorable evening. Somewhere along the way, the fun part of the relationship dwindled and then died out. Too often I was getting the shitty attitude like I got at the family dinner. Not often enough I got the sex that I so desperately received on the way home that night. One thing was for sure, the shapely but chubby girl I married was transforming her body with the gym workouts. And it seemed like this. The more she worked out, the better she looked. The better she looked, the more attention she got. The more attention she got from others, mostly men, the less attention I got. There is the old story about the frog in the pot. The temperature slowly increased. The frog didn't realize it was boiling until it was too late. That was what was happening around our house, except it wasn't boiling, it was freezing. Our relationship was what she was figuratively freezing to death. As I say, it wasn't always like that. After graduation from high school, I went to the local university and lived at home with my parents. I heard all the stories about friends who went away to college and their experiences. Parties, girls, drinking, and what sounded like lots of sex. Meanwhile, I was commuting back and forth to college and working part-time in the family jewelry business. I dated a little and had a few girlfriends my first few years of college, but nothing serious. Though I wasn't a virgin entering college, I could not be described as experienced. One thing about a university in an urban environment was there were a lot of older students, including women. I dated a lot of women in their late 20s and early 30s. While I was getting my Bachelor of Science in Business, I was figuratively working on an advanced degree in women's sexuality. I found two separate older single women who were willing instructresses. By the time I entered my junior year, I knew what it took to get a woman off. My confidence grew, and I also was able to get a date when I needed one. But so far, nothing long-term. During my junior year, I received a shock when I happened to see who I thought was Beth in my sociology class. It sure looked like the Beth I remembered from high school, only larger. After our second sociology class of the term, the larger Beth approached me. "Nick, I thought that was you after the last class. How are you?" she said. As I have said, the Beth I remember was attractive, but stuck up. I had not spoken nor even seen her since the end of high school. I was not prepared for the chubbier, friendlier version. Another thing that changed was me. In high school, I was 5 feet 9 inches and maybe 150 pounds. At the time I was tutoring Beth, I was sexually inexperienced and did not have a lot of confidence. Since high school, I had grown 3 inches and had started working out. I was now 6 foot, 175 pounds and fairly lean. Also, my sexual tutelage by the older women had given me much more confidence with the opposite sex. We ended up talking and having coffee together. She said she had gone away to college out of state. I knew the college she went to was a party school. She told me that the class sizes were too large, and she decided to come back home to finish her degree. She partied too much away from home, bombed out, and her parents are making her go to the boring commuter college in town. Nonetheless, we had a nice, pleasant conversation. I think my positive changes physically and self-confidence, and perhaps her academic failures and increased weight had put us on a similar strata. As you may recall, we were on different levels in high school. No more. Despite all this, I was reluctant to ask her out other than casual coffees after class. The pain and humiliation of my high school attempt had been a deep wound and I had not forgotten it. Finally, about halfway through the semester, as we were leaving the cafe, the path of our friendship changed. "Have a good weekend," I called to her, and she stopped. "Do you have a girlfriend?" she asked. I stopped and was momentarily speechless. No," I replied. "Okay, well, my parents are out of town and I wanted to know if you would like to come over and hang out this weekend?" She told me. A bunch of thoughts, ideas, and scenarios were spinning through my head. "Sure," I said. I was still trying to process all this. I went over on Saturday, and we hung out by her pool. It was October, and it wasn't quite warm enough to swim. We talked, drank a few of her parents' beers, and just had a good time. "Do you want to go in the hot tub?" she asked. When I told her I didn't have a swimsuit, she said I could use one of her dad's. As we were changing, I wondered where this was going. Parents out of town, invitation to the hot tub. This is how many an X-rated movie started. And guess what? These thoughts started the blood flowing to my veins. Great. That, coupled with her dad's Speedo, was going to make my sexual appendage quite evident. Fortunately, I got there first and quickly plunged chest deep into the swirling water. When Beth came out, my high school crush on her was validated. Thick light brown hair, a beautiful heart-shaped face, and nice body. Sure, there was some excess weight in her waist and thighs, but it did not register with me. As we talked, I kept having to concentrate on her face. After a few minutes, Beth asked if I would get us some beers. This was a problem. Seeing her in a bathing suit only reinforced my erection, and the Speedo was brief. I stood up, turned quickly, and vaulted over the edge and went for the beers. The cool air tempered my hard-on, but not much. As I climbed back in the spa, it was now Beth's eyes that were drifting lower. I saw a small smile play across her face as I submerged. I knew that the obvious play was to make a move. I was a little reluctant. I didn't want to get turned down. The scar from high school was still there. My sexual longing prevailed. I slid over to her side of the spa and slipped an arm around her. She turned toward me, and we began kissing. Inches from the promised land, her hand caught my hand, abruptly stopping my long fantasied caress. We continued to kiss, but after several more attempts, it was clear that kissing was all we were doing this particular night. The evening ended with another long make-out session at her front door. We continued to date throughout the school year, and I began to have strong feelings for Beth. True, she still was a prima donna. I delighted in making her happy and taking care of her. My reward was her appreciation of all my efforts. Did I romanticize my high school crush? Yes. But the more I got to know her, the more I began to care for her. Sexually, I had only made it to second base with Beth. I was in heaven. I tried to turn a double into an inside-the-park home run. I never even made it to third. When we talked about it, she just said she wasn't ready. She made some vague reference to past boyfriends. Not much else was said on this subject. For my 21st birthday, my grandfather took me out to lunch. When I wasn't in school, I was at our business SGD. My father and one of his sisters handled the business side of our company. My grandfather and I handled the design and creation of our products. The uniqueness of our designs separated us from the competition. We ate Hungarian food at my grandfather's favorite restaurant, Franz Josef. While consuming our dessert, Francis creams, my grandfather slid a small wrapped package across the table toward me. "Nico, you are 21 today. You are becoming a man. You will take a wife. You must find a woman worthy of you. When you do, this will be her sign of your devotion to her." When we leave the old country, I brought this with me. Through the struggle to get to America, I sheltered this stone. It is very sacred to our family and the old country. Choose your woman wisely, Middle. My grandfather said. I opened the package and saw a large, at least 2-carat flawless diamond. It was beautiful, but more than the beauty was the journey of this special stone. I looked at my grandfather, saw the tears in his eyes, and I became emotional too. Tidia, I said to my grandfather, Multimesk, thank you. This means so much to me. I thanked him. The sacrifice he has made in his life for his family was inspirational and a life lesson for me. Beth and I continued to date into my senior year in college. Both my mom and dad were very emphatic about my getting a business degree. My father would constantly remind me that the future of the family business would eventually be in my hands. Work hard and learn as much as possible. Beth and I grew closer. Sexually, I still had to stay above the out-of-bounds line, but our make-out and fondling sessions were still exciting to me. One of the challenges we had was finding times and places to be alone. We both still lived at home. The outdoors was often our option for privacy. We had a couple of secluded spots we knew of that allowed us solitude, and nature outside in daylight had a sensual excitement for both of us. One particularly warm Saturday in early October, we were hanging out, and I had to drop something off at our office at Stoica Gem Designs. Beth had been to our retail store on the main floor of our building before, but never upstairs to the offices. She followed me up and I put the file on my dad's desk that he would need first thing Monday morning. Beth looked around and I showed her where I made jewelry. My grandfather and I shared an office where we had our workstations. On the back wall was our large safe. She seemed fascinated by the safe and wanted to see what was in it. I locked the deadbolt coming into our office, and then I opened the safe. She was interested in all the loose stones. She asked lots of questions about all the different jewels. Then she saw the large diamond my grandfather gave me. It seemed to fascinate her. She began asking me all kinds of questions about that large diamond. I answered a few of the questions and told her about my grandfather's journey and his intentions for me and the diamond. She asks if she can hold the large stone. I give it to her, and she stared at it and caressed it. She was mesmerized by the diamond. A twinge of jealousy flared oddly through me. I put everything back in the safe and locked all the doors as we left. I asked Beth if she wanted to get coffee or something. Let's go out to Blue River, she said. Blue River State Park is a beautiful natural area not far out of town. There had been a landslide on the main route out there, so that road was closed. The other route was around Blandings Butte, and part of it was a dirt road. No problem for my Jeep. With the road closed, it was likely we'd have a lot of privacy. Driving out towards Blandings, Beth started caressing me. We pulled into the parking lot, and there were just 2 other cars, and they were at the far end. I threw the blanket in my backpack, and we headed towards the river. There was a place we had found off the river path, but we could still hear and see the river. We laid out the blanket and lay back with our hands behind our heads, looking up at the sky and listening to the river. Peaceful and relaxing. All of a sudden, Beth rolls on top of me and starts kissing me. I swiftly develop excitement. Beth, I gasp. And for a moment or two, she ignores me and continues her movements. Huh? She finally asks, Beth, I don't have a change of clothes. I say, I may not be able to control myself. I tell her. She looks at me, smiles, and says, well, we can't have that. I guess we do have a couple of options. And for the first time ever, even over my clothes, she touches me. Well, what are we going to do with that thing? She grins and says. Then she gets a more serious look and says, Nick, I want you too. I just want to be sure of your feelings for me. Beth, I love you. You should know that by now. I say. She immediately sheds her shorts and panties. Imagine the scene. We're at this beautiful park by a scenic river. Leaves in the trees starting to turn yellow and orange, and I'm seeing my girlfriend completely without clothes for the first time. Available and open to me, finally. We lay back down on the blanket and I start with kissing and then moved ahead. Nick, we don't have any protection, she says. I'm so excited I almost disregard her statement. I guess there was enough blood in my brain to slow down that thought process. We both start laughing. We then start hugging, and at that moment I wonder if I have ever been happier. This began a whole new chapter in our relationship. Physically, the sex was great, but on an emotional level, we started creating new experiences also. We became so close. We pledged our love for each other. This was all magnified for me by the hard-wired attraction I had for her as a teenager. As we grew closer, I began thinking about our future, proposing, and marriage. I knew in my heart that's what I wanted to do. I met her family, and though it was not a warm relationship, it was respectful and polite. She had been a little surprised at how crazy my family was, but at this point she was not complaining. My wonderful mother did her best to make Beth feel welcome at my frequent family gatherings. The one dark cloud was Aunt Dina. Dina never warmed up to Beth. Dina always told me I was her special boy. She said that she would always look after me. She gave me advice and it was always right on. Dina had a psychic insight that was disturbing. I just accepted my Dini as she was. It was clear though, she didn't care for Beth. She is not right one for you, Nico. She told me one night during the holidays. It was a holiday party at one of my uncle's house. Beth and I attended and it was a scene similar to the ones at my parents' house. Lots of people talking, shouting, laughing, eating and drinking. Beth gravitated to my female relatives closer to her age, and I went to make my rounds of greetings with all my relatives. During this time, I was seriously considering proposing to Beth as early as New Year's Eve, just a few weeks away. I had told no one of these thoughts. I had worked on the setting for my grandfather's Diamond After Hours, so no one knew of it or my plans. At the party, I approached Aunt Dina with a hug. Her arms were at her sides, and she would not hug me back. When I looked at her, she grabbed my arm and looked at me, her eyes like dark polished stones staring at me. "Nico, do not marry the girl," she whispered to me. I was stunned. I knew she had this psychic power, but the intensity and the subject matter stunned me. "What?" I asked her, confused but also very aware of what she was telling me. "I see unhappiness for you with that one. She not right one for you. I know this is certain as I breath the air." She tells me with great intensity. "Dina, I don't know what you are talking about." I say to her, "I love Beth and she is committed to me. Whether we marry in the future is my business. Now let's enjoy the party." I try to change the subject. "Nico," she whispers to me as I turn to go. She is clutching my sleeve as I move away. I look back into her eyes and the black pools momentarily turn red. A brief shiver travels up my spine. It had to be some type of reflection from the Christmas lights, I think. A few weeks later, I did propose to Beth on New Year's Eve and she accepted. She seemed almost as happy with the custom ring with my grandfather's stone as she was of us being my wife. I joked with her about that. My relationship with Dina cooled during this time. We were both polite, but I could tell she was upset with me. She attended the bridal showers and other events leading up to the wedding that spring, but we did not have those long conversations together like we once did. I was so happy with Beth. I overlooked the changed relationship with Dina. At first, perhaps I should have thought more about what Dina had tried to tell me. Back to the present. Beth examined her body in the bathroom mirror. "I'm about 8 pounds away from my high school weight," she thought. "I really do look hot," she thought with a smile on her face. "If I were single now, I'd have the guys lining up to go out with me. And there would be an even longer line of guys who wanted to sleep with me. Instead, I'm stuck with Nick," she thought. "He's a nice guy and provides for us, but I'm bored with him. With Nick, it's the same old thing over and over. I need some excitement. And if he asks me to go to another one of those horrible family dinners, I will refuse. The highlight of my days are going to the gym after work. I love the workouts and I get to flirt with some of the guys down there. And I love my personal training sessions with Josh. Josh Ravens is a hunk. He's got to be 6 feet 3 inches or taller. Long blonde hair and so muscular and sculpted. I think he's got a thing for me. He always checks me out and brushes against me. He also makes these slightly sexual comments to me too. I get excited working out with him. I have a private session with him sometime this Saturday. Nick wants me to go to his parents' house for dinner that same night. Maybe I can ask Josh for our session to be in the evening. Then I have an excuse not to go to the dinner. That will save an argument. Wednesday at the gym, Josh and I go through my training session. I'm getting a little hot thinking about him. I think I'll ask him about Saturday. "Josh, I want to do my training session a little later on Saturday." I tell him. "What time are you thinking, sexy?" He asks. What a flirt. He's always calling me some cute name like sexy. 6 o'clock. I tell him. Saturday I close with Brandon at 6 o'clock. Josh says, "Maybe we can do a private session from 6 to 8. He said with a bit of a smirk on his face. Yes, I thought. This gets me out of the boring dinner at Nick's parents'. I now have a legitimate reason to not go. This will save an argument, and I'll get to spend some alone time one-on-one with Josh. Meanwhile, Nick, I do enjoy the Saturday nights at my parents'. I never have understood why Beth seems to dislike these dinners so much. Delicious food. Anything you may want to drink. Wonderful people all trying to enjoy each other on a day we are not at work. What happens is my father, my grandfather, and I end up talking business after dinner. Unfortunately, these can be long conversations. I feel a little bad that I have not mingled with some of the other relatives much. One person I need to spend time with is my elderly Aunt Dina. Looking at Dina, I wondered how old she was. My first memories of her was that she was old then, and that had to have been over 20 years ago. She seems to not have aged. A shapeless body and a severe face, but those beautiful eyes. I noticed her coughing as I walked up. "Deanie," I said with a smile and a warm hug. "Are you feeling okay?" My casual friendliness was met with a serious look from Dina. She hugged me back hard and clutched my arm. "Nico, my time is growing short. There is much I need to tell you and show you," she said with grave seriousness. "Deanie, what's wrong? We need to get a doctor if you're not feeling well," I say with concern. "No doctor," she says and waves her hands as if to dismiss the importance of her own health. "There is much you need to know and much I need you to do," she says as she continues clutching my arm with surprising strength. I'm confused. Much to learn and do? I start to ask her what's wrong with her, and once again she waves her hands in dismissal. She then says, "First I need to know about my wife." "What about Beth?" I ask. "How did we get from her health to my wife so quickly?" "Nico, she goes with other man. Now she is with other man." She grips my arm even harder. "Right now? She with the other man right now?" she says. I see this in my head. She is clutching my arm, eyes cast upward with great intensity, and then she slumps. She looks exhausted. She sits for a minute, and then begins to cough. My mother walks over and says it's time for Dina to go. She lives in a small dwelling behind my parents' house, and my mom takes her arm to walk her out. As my mom is leading her away, Dina says to me, "Nico, you come see me tomorrow 9 o'clock." And I nod that I will. I have a lot of questions. Dina was so emphatic in her proclamation. It is disturbing. Meanwhile at the gym, Josh Ravens glanced at the clock on the wall at Edge Fitness. 5:45. If I can pull this off tonight, this may top anything that Brandon has done, he thinks. One of the perks of being a personal trainer are the women. Josh and Brandon have a little competition. Who can screw the most and the hottest chicks? Unofficially, Brandon was ahead, but if I can get Beth Stoika, a married woman, this would put me in the lead, Josh thought. Definitely Josh was a better-looking guy. More handsome, long blonde hair, a better physique, and taller. Brandon Benetti was little shorter and muscular, with a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow. Josh had a plan for tonight. At 6 p.m., Beth would get here. The few people still working out on Saturday night will be hurried out the door. Brandon would turn down the main lights and lock the women's locker room, leaving only the men's showers available. Then he would leave. The plan was for Beth to be forced to shower in the men's locker room. It all worked to plan. Beth was dressed in her workout gear and left her change of clothes in her gym bag behind the counter. Josh put her through a strenuous workout to make sure she perspired heavily and needed the shower. He also was extra professional, no touching or remarks tonight. Finally, it was nearly 8 o'clock and the workout concluded. They chatted for a bit and Josh complimented Beth on what a good session she had and how great she looked. "Time for a shower," Josh said in an offhand way. Beth grabbed her gym bag and headed to the women's locker room only to find the door locked. "Josh," she called to him. "The door's locked." He returned and made a show of searching for the keys. All of a sudden, he looked up with a surprised look on his face. "Shit," he exclaimed in mock alarm. "Brandon's got the other set of keys for the locker room. I just have the front door keys." He shook his head and glanced up as if trying to work out the logistical problem with the showers. "Look, Beth, we're both adults. We can share the shower room. I won't peek if you won't," he said with a smile. Beth looked at him as if trying to figure out if this was all intentional or not. Bottom line, it didn't matter. If I can share a shower with this hunk, who's complaining? "Okay, I guess," she said. In the locker room, they both took different sides. The illusion of privacy. Josh got to the showers first and strategically took the one in the middle. Beth would be close no matter which shower she took. "I'll play it cool and see where this goes," Josh thought. Finally, Beth walked into the showers wrapped in her towel. Josh didn't even pretend he wasn't interested. Beth removed her towel, and there she stood with that sculpted. Josh immediately became excited, walked over, and started kissing her. For her part, Beth gave token resistance, saying, "But Josh, I'm married." They were both in a frenzy exploring each other's beautiful bodies after all these months of mostly only looking. Beth enjoyed the sex. Josh got up, helped her up, kissed her, and then finished his shower. As Beth was finishing her shower, Josh quickly got dressed. He made small talk with her as she was getting dressed, just as if she had finished a workout, not just screwed him. There was no new sexual intimacy, more just a physical act. "If you want to wait in the lobby a moment, I'll button it up in here and then I can unlock the doors for us," Josh told her. Josh threw the towels in the laundry bin and turned off the overhead lights. There was ambient light from the laundry area, so the locker room was not pitch black, just oddly shadowed. Walking past the full-length mirror, Josh turned to check himself out. He was feeling pretty good about just screwing Beth Stoica. As he looked in the mirror, for a brief moment, he saw the image of an old black-haired hag with intense eyes, looking back at him. It startled him, but just as quickly the image was gone. What the hell was that, he thought. Brandon was not going to believe all this. Boy, do I have a good story to tell him. I got home a little after 10 p.m. from my parents, and Beth was already in bed. I wanted to find out what she had done tonight. Dina was so emphatic about her cheating on me, but when was this all supposed to have happened? She told me she was at the gym, and now she's home. When was the time for the sex to have occurred? It was a restless sleep thinking about Dina, her strange requests of me, and her insistence on Beth's infidelity. I trusted Dina, but was she getting old and losing it? And then there was Beth. She was becoming so indifferent towards me. Was this just a phase that we were going through? Why didn't we laugh and have fun anymore? Beth was becoming more and more like she had been in high school. Stuck up and egotistical. Always looking for attention. I drifted off thinking something had to give. Sunday morning, 9 a.m. I'm at Aunt Dina's. It had been years since I had been in her little dwelling. It was a small building at the back of my parents' yard. Growing up, I'd always been warned about staying out of Dina's space. I never questioned why, I just stayed away. It was small, cramped and dark. Just a studio with what I assumed was a bathroom in the back. A small kitchen, a table and a few chairs, and a low single bed in the corner. One wall looked like bookcases with embroidered curtains covering what was behind. The dwelling had an odd, not bad, herbally smell. Dina greeted me with a hug. "Nico, you have tea?" A statement from Dina, not a question. "I have story to tell you." She sighed and said, "This part of my life is almost over, and there are things that have to be done. But first you must understand. I tell you about my life. My people were traveling people. We keep moving. We were Romani. Today they call us Gypsy. When I was young, it was difficult time for Europe. Wars. The Germans, the Russians, no one like the Romani. We had to travel. We hid in the forest. Our home was on wheels. We struggled. People say Germans in trains come, take people away, their families never see them again. We were afraid of that. We were always hungry. I stay close to my grandmother, Babina. She take me to the forest to find food. We have food only to eat if we find it. But she also find plants, bark, seeds, root, berries, and other nunjek. Babina brings small wood cart with us to woods. She carry all her makings in the cart. The makings were in clay pot. Babina tell me how to make mixture. Some mixture we eat and some we use for other things. One day Babina and I were in forest, and she say bad things are coming. I look at Babina and she is saying words over and over. Her eyes go up in head. All I see is white where her eyes go. We run to cave and hide. Babina say that she has sight. I was only 5 years and I don't know what she mean. She say that she see things before they happen, that why we hide. She see danger. She say she see in me that I have the sight too. She tell me how to mix makings to make sight stronger. For 6 days we stay in cave. Babina teach me about makings. She say to me to be careful because they can be very powerful. We were cold and hungry. On last night, she tell me no matter what happen I take makings. I don't understand. On day 7 my Babina does not wake up. I'm frightened, but I remember what Babina say. I take cart and go to find my family. Our house on wheels is burned. All family gone. I just walk down path. And then a kind lady find me. They bring me to their home. They give me food and bed. They save my life. The kind lady was your grandfather's mother. I stay with them my whole life. I help them. They take care of me and bring me to America when they leave old country. They let me bring makings. Nico, she says, I see for you a different woman for your life. I try to tell you this, but your woman with her big namas make you deaf to my word. Dina says, I say nothing. I just listen. She go with other man. I see them without clothes together. They have sex. She break wedding promise. She tells me, Dini, I say, how do you see this? I ask. With sight and my makings I can see things, Dina says. First, Nico, you need to learn about makings. With great effort, Dina gets up and opens the embroidered curtains showing a multitude of jars, pots, bowls, urns, and other odd containers. The herbally smell gets much stronger. She begins to describe all the different spices, herbs, and ingredients. Her makings. For some reason I am fascinated, and we sit there for many hours going over all her makings and what they are used for. Nico, I grow tired. I need rest. Come back tomorrow supper time. I show you more. With a brief hug, Dina moves to her small bed. She looks exhausted. All week long after work I continue to meet with Dina after work. Each evening I am there for several hours. For some strange reason, not only does the information fascinate me, but I'm seeming to retain photographically what Dina is teaching me. I asked Dina about this. It is the tea, Nico. She says, my babina make this tea. Tea make brain like sponge. Lots of makings. Before I go, I show you the tea. Much to learn first. She goes on. All week long, we avoid talking about Beth. She has shown me so much about the different combinations of plants and herbs and what they can do. Some of the ingredients, her makings, are dwindling in quantity. These are mostly things brought to the US from Europe over 30 years ago. There is one substance. She shows me in an old gray urn. There is very little left. Dina calls it paprika. Use wisely. She says, come from bark of ancient tree. Apparently combining it with certain other ingredients is supposed to have strong results. Dina calls it magic, pronounced like magic with a hard G. This one, she says, describing the effects of the paprika, can help people or can be used on bad people. Small amount left. She says as she peers into the urn. Enough for 5 brews, I think. Use wisely. And then she told me all the ways it can be used. If this actually worked, it would be incredible. I don't question what Dina says. I just listen and absorb. I've been at Aunt Dina's all week long and I have not seen much of Beth. Saturday, and Beth's attitude is still the same. Cold, non-affectionate, and argumentative. I ask her what her plans are, and she tells me she has another private session with her trainer this evening at 6 p.m. Okay, well, do you want to grab lunch somewhere together? I have a feeling I know what the answer is, but I still want to try to salvage this relationship. Sorry, not today. Gina and I are shopping and getting manicures. She says as she breezes out the door. I then hear her car start up and take off. I don't even rate a goodbye anymore. I am starting to have serious doubts. It's going to take a lot to salvage this relationship, and if what Dina says about Beth and other men is true, it is definitely over. I think with sadness about my grandfather's stone. Did I waste it on the wrong woman? I've somehow got to find out if what Dina says about Beth is true. Meanwhile, Beth at the gym. This time it was Josh that suggested the after-hours training session for Saturday night. I felt a little guilty cheating on Nick, but it was so naughty, and he'll never know. The men's shower room. If ever I get up the nerve to tell my girlfriends, they will love that story. Josh has been acting a little weird since. He hasn't been hitting on me as much. I was beginning to think that he didn't like me after our shower scene. But then he asked me to come back Saturday night and train with him again. He must have liked it. The one that's starting to hit on me is Brandon. He's cute too, just a little different looking than Josh. Josh is tall and blonde, kind of like a surfer. Brandon has a bad boy look, dark and muscular. He acts like he's God's gift to women, but in a fun and funny way. This reminds me of high school and my first few years of college, a bunch of good-looking guys who want me. I sometimes wonder why I got married so young. I like it when guys hang out with me and flirt. Nick is nice, and he's got a lot of things going for himself, but he doesn't excite me. He is good in bed and I normally get off, but it's just the same old Nick. Oh well, as long as we are at the gym, there's no way for Nick to find out. Josh, you set it up for Saturday again? Brandon asked. Yep, she practically jumped me when I asked her. I guess she liked it. Josh bragged. So, how's it gonna work? She won't know I'm joining in beforehand, right? Brandon asked. No, she won't. Here's the plan. A little before 8 p.m., Beth and I will hit the showers just like last time. You wait in the stretching room upstairs. Stay there until 8 o'clock. Then come in and undress like you're going to take a shower. She and I will already be getting it on. You show up and we see what happens. Josh, with a broad grin, told Brandon. Think she'll go for it? Brandon wondered. Sure she will. Josh answered confidently. We've never tag-teamed one of these chicks before. This will be a first. A good-looking married one, too. You worried that her husband will find out? Asked Brandon. Josh shook his head. No way. We're at the gym and it's locked and closed. How could he find out? I've seen him, Josh thought. What's a guy like that going to do even if he did find out? Saturday afternoon, and I'm at Dina's. She continues her instructions to me about all the different makings and what they can do. Dina seems like she has aged considerably within the past week. She's moving slowly and her cough has gotten worse. When I ask her about the cough, she just waves her hands. My time is short, Nico. My family died 80 years ago. Time for Dina start on next journey. She says, all my arguments concerning her health and how much more life she has to live are greeted with firm dismissal. Her mind is made up. She has other objectives now. Nico, I must talk to you about the paprika. You mix with other makings, very potent. Depend what you mix with, paprika do different things. Dina says with great seriousness. She shows me different herbs, roots and other ingredients, and what they are supposed to do. It all seems so far-fetched, but my irrational brain is accepting all Dina tells me. Maybe it's the strange and delicious tea. We spend extra time talking about the paprika. She tells me that mixed correctly it has the ability to change the body. She tells me when my grandfather was a child he fell out of a tree and broke his ankle. Dina applies a mixture using paprika, and within a week he was running. She told another story about a neighbor that beat his children. One of them was a friend of Dina's. One day, without him suspecting, she sprinkled the mixture on his hands. She never saw it, but was told by her friend that her father's hands started to shrivel and shrink. The friend was never beaten by the father again. Strange stories, but I accepted them as truth. I wondered what I was to do with this knowledge. You will know when to use. She told me. She slowly and methodically goes through the brewing of each ingredient, so I now know how to mix these specific brews for the different results. We have a small dinner, and I begin to leave, but Dina grabs my arm. Normally by this time in the evening she is exhausted. Tonight though, she seems to have a lot of energy. She sets about making tea, but I can tell it's a different tea. When I ask her about it, she says, "Now you will see." I'm puzzled, but I have learned to disregard my skepticism when it comes to Aunt Dina. So far everything she has told me has been right on. Even those years ago when she urged me not to marry Beth, I'm beginning to realize perhaps I should have heeded that advice too. We drink the tea and Dina scolds me to drink it all. I do. I'm beginning to feel a little lightheaded and sleepy, and like background noise I hear Dina tell me to hold her hand. I do, and my hand seems disconnected from my body, but I can feel Dina's dry, ancient grip. I close my eyes. In my brain, all I see is black. Slowly light starts forming and I can make out shapes, and then I see what looks like a city street. Soon I recognize buildings, and then my vision is inside a building. I recognize the interior of the building. It's the gym. Edge Fitness. I can now hear sounds and I see movement, and the door to the locker room is closing. I hear the noise as it shuts. It feels like I'm watching a movie. This is what I see. This time there is no pretense of modesty. Josh and Beth strip down and with gropes and fondling make their way to the shower room. They turn on a couple of showers to increase the sensory experience. "Excuse me," Brandon remarks, acting as if he's surprised. Beth looks up startled, and she is confused about the turn of events in the shower. Beth, still very excited, doesn't know whether to cover up, leave, or continue. "Hey, you guys go on with what you're doing. I may just watch." Brandon tells them, "Did you guys plan this?" She asks accusingly, a strange look on her face. "No, it just happened," replies Josh. "You looked like you liked it," Josh said with a smile. Brandon high-fives Josh. Beth with a small smile thinks, "Wow, two guys who want me. Maybe this was a little too witty, but I love being worshipped by these two young hunks. Maybe they'll want to take me out to dinner?" Meanwhile, all Josh and Brandon were thinking was not a bad piece. "I'll walk Beth out, you shut it down," Brandon tells Josh as he and Beth make their way out. Not even a goodbye from Josh for Beth. Josh shuts everything down. He grabs the towels and throws them in the laundry bin and heads out. The egotistical Josh can't pass up a chance to catch his own reflection and glances at the mirror. This time it's the old hag and someone else looking back at him with real anger in their eyes. What the hell? As he runs out of the locker room, he hears a crack, and out of the corner of his eye, he sees the mirror break. Am I losing my mind, Josh thinks? Or is something else going on? Sunday morning, I didn't speak to Beth last night, but I do catch a glimpse of her as she heads towards the shower. I spy the telltale bite marks on her body. Even though I completely believe in my visions last night with Dina, tangible and person proof, the marks on her body validate what I saw. My memories of what I experienced were like remembering a dream. The details were fuzzy, but certain parts of the vision were quite clear. Those parts one will not forget. Beth is acting as cool as ever, barely acknowledging me. I reciprocate the same attitude. It's a comfortable ignorance in our house that Sunday, each doing our own thing. Oddly, Beth seems a bit unhappy that I seem to not care about her mood. Sunday midday, I'm at Dina's. She is looking much worse. Coughing, short of breath, and lethargic. I wonder if our experience last night weakened her. When I arrive, she is laying in her small bed, motionless and staring up toward the ceiling. I sit with her, hold her hand, and we talk. We talk about her makings, we talk about her life, and we talk about the future. Finally, she tells me, "You need to leave your wife. She no good." I think about that, and my natural instinct is to defend my marriage, but I come to the conclusion, quickly, that I agree with Dina. "Yes," I say with a sigh, "but they need to pay. Pay for their violation of my marriage." I am finally angry. Angry at Beth. Angry at the two a-holes that violated her without a thought beyond their own pleasure. and finally angry at myself for my poor judgment. Dina is breathless, shallow breathing. She is not healthy. She is nodding in agreement with my assessment of the situation. "Nico," she says in such a low whisper, I need to bring my head close to her to hear. "You know what to do. Use the babrika. Punish them. Take from them what they covet." Dina seems to fall asleep. She is ill, but I know she wants no doctor's help. I sit with her holding her hand, listening to her shallow breath. Take what they covet. I think about that as I sit. When I think she is asleep, I move to disengage my hand from her. Her grip tightens, and her big, beautiful eyes stare at me. In a quiet whisper, she says, "Nico, don't leave me." I stare at Dina as her eyes flutter shut. With eyes closed, she whispers to me, "Shadia." I move my head closer to understand her, and she says, "Take care of Shadia. She is the one." She immediately falls into deep slumber, and I ease my hand from hers. For a moment I sit and watch her, and what I see makes me think she is finally at rest, barely alive, but at peace. I take a moment and think of Dina and her life. For the briefest moment in my mind, I see a small child pulling a wooden cart, alone, through a forest path. I am not sure how long I sat with Dina, but my tears spilled freely on the wooden floor of her small cottage. What was Shadia? I thought. What did that mean? My mind shifted to the two a-holes from the gym and Beth. They will all pay, and they will pay in ways that will affect them most intimately. I began my plan, and I believed I knew enough about Dina's makings to have that help me. Take what they covet. Where the hell was Nick? Thought Beth. Why doesn't he just live with his parents? He's over there so much. Probably hanging out with that creepy aunt, or whatever relation she is to him. That ugly old hag is weird. I can barely understand her when she talks. I'm pissed off at Josh and Brandon too. After we all left the gym Saturday, they just took off together. No invitation for dinner or a drink. Not even a kiss or hug goodbye. I deserve a lot more respect than that. Even though the sex was fun and exciting, I feel used. But I deserve to be pampered by these guys. That's what I want. And Nick, why has he been acting like such an a-hole lately? I'm used to him giving me my way, especially with how hot I look now. Nick should be waiting on me hand and foot. I'm going to cool it with the guys at the gym. I'm going to start being a little nicer to Nick. He is a nice guy and normally takes good care of me. Not exciting, but stable. I think I need to take a break from some of this stuff and go with stability, at least for a while. I think I will offer Nick this hot body sometime this week. How can he resist? Meanwhile, Nick. All week I am planning. Surprisingly, Beth is acting much nicer to me. I play along. I have a plan for her too. One thing I will not do is have sex with her. Not after what happened on Saturday night. The funny thing is, now that I don't want her sexually, she's giving signs that she wants me. Even a week ago, I would have been all over her. Not now. I do act pleasant and as normal as possible. This is all part of my plan. Casually, I ask Beth what days she will be at Edge Fitness. She tells me Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday this week, and both days on the weekend. Perfect. On Tuesday, I meet with our lawyer, Louis Sabo, and he recommends me to a family law attorney. I set my appointment for later in the day. I emailed a list of documents to bring. 4 p.m. Tuesday, and I meet my lawyer, Abraham Green. A singularly unimpressive-looking man, but I am assured he is good at what he does. He cannot be more than 5.5 feet tall, dressed slightly haphazardly. A mop of curly gray hair and thick steel glasses that give an absent-minded, professor-like impression. Nonetheless, he knows his stuff and asks me a few questions. "So you think Beth is unfaithful?" He asks, squinting through the thick glasses. "Yes." I say, "I'm sure of it." I tell Abe. He makes a notation with his pen. "And you have no evidence?" He says, not really a question but a statement. If I start telling him about Aunt Dina, her makings, the site, and what happened in the locker room, this guy will speed dial the psychiatric unit. No. I say, "I just know she is, and I know with whom also." I tell Abe. Okay, he says, waving his hand. He can tell I'm getting worked up thinking about it. It really doesn't matter. We cannot use adultery as grounds. We will just say irreconcilable differences. Okay. He cocks his head and asks me. I nod. Going through our assets, it's fairly straightforward. I owned the house before we were together. She has no rights to it. My income is more than hers, so I may take a hit here. Our vehicles are our own. No problem. And then we get into the weeds with furniture and other smaller possessions. No big issues. There is one thing. I ask Abe, what about the wedding ring I gave her? I tell him a little of the history and the fact it is sort of a family heirloom and how important it is. Abe looks to the ceiling, lightly tapping his pen on his pursed lips, mentally examining this legal puzzle. That may be difficult, he says. Technically, it is a gift you gave without conditions. We will try. We discussed a few more details and discussed when and where she was to be served the divorce decree. Okay, that was in motion. I will check that off my list. But there is more to do. That evening I am at Aunt Dina's. She is still weak and I fear her days are becoming numbered. She continues to refuse any offer of medical assistance. I tell her my plan, and from her small bed she directs me. She tells which jar to combine with what. She asks to see the dwindling supply of paprika. Under her strict inspection, I factor out small amounts of the powerful ground bark into 3 separate containers. There is just a small quantity left. With her precise instructions, I create 3 separate brews. Each one will have a specific effect on its recipient. Take what they covet. My mom and dad and my grandfather know that something isn't right with my marriage. I don't go into specifics yet. They just know there is a problem. They also know that I have been spending a lot of time with Dina, and we discuss her health. I then tell my father that I will be taking Friday off to take care of some personal business. They all want to know what is going on, but they respect my wishes and don't ask. Earlier this week, I had called Edge Fitness and confirmed that Brandon worked Friday 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Josh works noon to 8 p.m. I arrived at Edge at 2 p.m. It looked like Josh had a personal training session with a female, maybe 10 years older than Beth. Smooth and attentive, he was a predator in motion. Light touches, compliments, and flashing his bright white teeth at his prey. Wonder if he's already screwing her? I saw Brandon working out. I know a lot of times the employees will mix in their own workout at the end of their shift under the guise of demonstrating to customers the proper way to lift weights. Brandon was going to be the difficult one. Based on my experience in men's locker rooms, I had a suspicion how I could implement my plan with him. Josh will be easier. I was on an elliptical machine working up a sweat. Out of the corner of my eye, I tracked Brandon. Right at 3 p.m., I saw him head to the men's locker room. I also noticed he hadn't punched out on the time clock. Now Edge is paying him while he showers. What a douche. In the locker room, I disrobe down to my athletic shorts. I carefully remove the brew in the yellow container and pour it in one of the disposable paper cups from the locker room. This one's for Brandon. I sat on the bench, cup in hand, waiting for Brandon to finish his shower. I see him shut off the water and grab his towel. With towel up to his face, torso fully exposed, he starts his slow walk back to the lockers. Just as we pass, I fake a trip. Stumbling, I throw the contents of my cup directly on Brandon's dangling Johnny. The brew douses his member. Hey, watch it. He barks at me. Sorry, I say. My bad, I further explain. Suddenly, he recognizes me as Beth's husband. I had been in here enough times with her in the early days, just not many lately. Brandon becomes far more friendly. I think. He thinks to act buddy-buddy to me after screwing my wife is a great joke. We have a short conversation and I say to him, thanks with your help getting Beth in shape. She really looks good and I wanted to thank you and Josh. I say with false sincerity. I'm sure inside he's laughing at me. Go ahead. Hey, no problem, man. I know he has forgotten my first name. I wanted to do something for you and Josh. I haven't asked him yet, but I was hoping you and he would come over to Beth and my house for dinner tomorrow night. I've got steak and lobster and whatever you may want to drink. About 7 o'clock. I say, sure, man. He says, surprised and pleased. Thanks, looking forward to it. He says, oh, and Brandon. He looks up at me. It's a surprise for Beth, so don't say anything if you happen to see her. Okay. He agrees. I get my stuff together and head out to find Josh. One thing I have observed in any men's locker room, the guys with Big Johnny like to parade them around in front of everyone for all to see. And Brandon did. It just made my mission that much easier. 1 down, 2 to go. Josh was harder than I thought. The body target was easier, but he was always with someone. Finally, I caught him alone near the drinking fountain. Josh's brew was in a paper cup just like Brandon's. Fake trip, brew straight in his face and down his chest and arms. He looked up, sputtered and confused about what just happened. I overwhelm him with a towel and profuse apologies. My effort with the towel was actually to lengthen the skin contact from the brew. I apologize again. What was that shit? Josh asks me, sniffing his upper arm where the liquid had been. It's some new energy drink. I say, it isn't very good. It stinks, he says. I nod in agreement and then invite him over to the dinner. He's all for it and even asks if he can bring a bottle of wine. I thank him and make the same request to him I made to Brandon. It's a surprise for Beth. Just one more. Based on the way this week went, this shouldn't be too difficult. Friday night after dinner, Beth is showing me glimpses of the old, non-stuck-up Beth from our earlier years together. Too bad it's just an act. She's giving me signs that she is open for lovemaking tonight. Perfect. Hey honey, I know you've been working out a lot and your body looks great. I tell her, and she loves the compliment. How would you like a nice massage? You deserve to be pampered. I've got some new massage oil that I think you'd like. I say. She's all for it and starts undressing. I grab the last container of mixed brew. With slow strokes, I work the liquid into her naked skin. I am wearing the lightest of plastic gloves to protect my skin. I can't help it. I make an excuse about my back hurting as to why we can't have sex tonight. Wistfully, I think that may be the last time for that with her. Oh well. Saturday morning, and the non-bitchy version of Beth continues. Her infidelity was a deal breaker, so we have no chance of reconciliation, but too bad she wasn't pleasant like this more often. I'm having a few people over for dinner tonight. I tell her. Beth immediately turns to look at me, a slightly alarmed expression on her face. I know she thinks it may be some of my family. She already thinks I spend too much time with my family anyway. Don't worry, I say with a smile. It's not my family. She tries to hide it, but I can tell she's relieved by that information. Who's coming over? She asks. It's a surprise. Just dress nice and casual, sexy if you want. You really are looking great, Beth. I'll take care of everything. I say to her. I am getting pampered by Nick. Beth thinks. The massage, now dinner, all the nice compliments. Maybe I have taken him for granted too much lately. Shortly after 7 p.m. the doorbell rings. I ask Beth to grab the door. I'm busy in the kitchen. I hear the guys greeting her loudly, and then after a moment I hear her hushed comments to them. I can imagine her asking, "What are you two doing here?" I can't quite hear what was actually said. They come in and I am in full host mode. Josh actually brought a bottle of wine. I look at it, screw on cap, check the label. A cheap shitty bottle of wine. Thank you, Josh. This looks delicious. Mind if I save it for an important occasion? I ask. Josh has a look as if to say, "It is?" I'm sure he grabbed it out of the bargain rack at Kroger. I have a bottle of good wine open and everyone is ushered outside. It's warm out and we all sit at the patio table. I bring them appetizers, refills, and set the table for the surf and turf dinner. The guys are obliviously happy about the great treatment. Beth looks as if she's not sure what is going on. I open a new bottle of wine and drop a few things in it that I had retrieved from one of Dina's jars. They went through that bottle before dinner was even served. We have the delicious dinner and more wine. With all the alcohol, Beth has relaxed. At one point, Josh asks to use the bathroom, and I ask Beth to show him the way while Brandon and I remain outside. I have a pretty good idea what may happen. Beth returns. I notice her cheeks are flushed and clothing looks slightly askew. I'm sure Josh tried for a quick feel while old hubby was sitting outside. We've gone through 4 bottles of wine. I've had barely a glass. Thanks to my additive, the guys are more relaxed than they would have normally been. Their stupid grins also testify to their inebriation. Now I bring out the tequila and we all take a shot. My lips blocks the liquid from entering my mouth, and I casually dump it on the patio. My objective is to get all of them drunk and relaxed. Mission accomplished. They are all slumped in their chairs, not a care in the world. I stand up. There are a couple of reasons for this little gathering tonight. I say, first, I want to thank you two for helping Beth get into such great shape. She really looks great. And guys, you should see her naked. She looks awesome. Josh and Brandon share a knowing smirk, and Beth acts slightly embarrassed by my comments. To them, I'm the friendly, stupid husband that is unaware of their shared carnality. I go on. I want to tell you, Josh, Brandon, about my Aunt Dina. Dina came with my family to the U.S. from Eastern Europe over 30 years ago. My family found her as an orphan. Dina is Romani. Most call the Romani gypsy. The gypsies have been persecuted for centuries. One of the things they have had to rely on is what we may call magic. They use different spices, plants, roots, and many other ingredients to make what they call brews. I'm looking at the group. Josh is stifling a yawn. Beth looks like she has no clue where this is going, but she looks pissed. Brandon looks somewhat interested. I go on to tell them the gypsy believe that the brew can change physical properties in humans. Josh does not understand, so I have to spell it out for him. No shit. He offers, man, I wish that really worked. For a moment, let's talk about physical properties. I have a question for each of you. It's kind of a game. I say with a disarming smile. What physical property do you possess that you like the most, that you are most proud of? It takes me a minute to explain what I mean, but they all get it. Brandon, I ask, what physically are you most proud of? He hesitates and finally says, well, I guess it has to be my Johnny. Josh laughs. Beth smiles and I nod to him like a teacher acknowledging a correct answer from a student. Good. I say. At Josh's turn, he says, it's kind of a toss-up between my face and my physique. They're both pretty awesome. He tells us. Once again, I nod in agreement. When I get to Beth, she's silent for a minute, and then Josh chimes in, "Gotta be your body," and gets a laugh out of Brandon. I smile and nod. I am no threat to them. I suppose I am most proud of my body, all of it. She says, "I totally agree." I say, "So now let's all go back to yesterday." And I ask them to remember the tripping and stumbling and the liquid being splashed on them by mistake. And then I ask Beth if she recalls the body massage and the unique oil I worked into her skin. Of course she does. My audience is confused. What about this liquid? Well, Beth and gentlemen, my aunt told me when you are wronged you need to punish your enemy. One way to do that is to take what they covet. I'll explain. I can tell by their puzzled looks they still aren't tracking. You all told me what you were most proud of physically. Face, body, what you covet about yourself. The liquid I applied to all of was a brew that my Aunt Dina helped me with. You recall I told you about her gypsy heritage. Each one was designed for the specific anatomical area where it was applied. In some cases it will make some things grow. In others it will make some things shrink. And in some it will just make those body parts worse. There are some brews that make things better too. That was not one of the brews I used yesterday, unfortunately. There probably is no such thing as magic, so you may have nothing to worry about. But it will be interesting to see what happens. My understanding is we will know soon. "Hey man," snarls Brandon. "That's assault. We could call the cops. Prove it, a-hole." My smiling host persona is gone. I'm pissed. I'd love to hear you explaining that you were assaulted with a magic liquid. Why man? Why are you doing this to us? Vapid Josh asks. Different reasons. I tell him, back in my lecture mode. For you and the other a-hole sitting next to you. It's because not only did you screw Beth. For a moment she starts to object. I tell her to shut up. But you disrespect me, Beth, countless other women, and the sanctity of marriage. I go on. You two think with your big Johnny and your handsome face you can take what you want without it affecting others? You both thought you could behave like this without consequences? That is why, like my aunt taught me, take what they covet. And you, dear my bride, do you think you can violate our marriage like that and get away with it? Was I not a good husband? Did I not take care of you? Provide for you? Attend to your needs? Were you bored? Or are you just stupid enough to let these two a-holes seduce you? Think about that. I tell her. Now this little party is over. Time for our guests to leave. I am back in host mode. I hope it has been an enlightening evening for everyone, and listen. That whole story about the gypsy brew, it's probably just some old legend. You may not need to worry about it. I pause for a moment and then quietly I say, but perhaps you should. After they leave, Beth went through the normal cycle of verbiage after being accused. First, she denied. When I started giving her a blow-by-blow, pun intended, review of just the last session with both guys, she started to come off the denial, particularly when I related the double play action while in the showers. She knew that I somehow knew. Next step was to beg forgiveness. It was just the one time, she claimed. And then I related to her what I knew about her first encounter. This was based on what Dina told me. Then it didn't mean anything, it was just sex. I just shook my head at that. When she continued to keep up this line of reasoning, I snapped. Just sex. I roared. You promised to your family, my family, our friends and me that you were mine alone. Just sex, give me a break. I continued. What's going to happen to us, Nick? She pleaded. I told her I didn't know, but I did know. By the end of the week, she will be served. More than anything, I wanted to see up close how the brew would affect her. For that reason, and that reason alone, I didn't kick her out immediately. I told her to move her stuff to the spare bedroom. I also wanted to see what happened to Josh and Brandon. I decided that starting next week, I was going to start going to Edge every afternoon from 1 to 2. I worked that schedule out with my dad and grandfather. At Edge, the two a-holes ignored me. I was fine with that. By midweek, Josh was starting to look bad. His long blonde hair looked like it was coming out in patches. His eyes looked deep-set and bloodshot. I never got close enough to see, but something bad was going on with his teeth too. Instead of the tight tank tops, he now wore large, shapeless sweatshirts. Brandon was, as you would expect, harder to check on. The brew Dina designed for Brandon was the same one so many years ago she used on the abusive neighbor. It was designed to make that body part shrivel and shrink. Once I was in the locker room while Brandon was showering. When he walked back, his towel was firmly wound round his waist, hiding his Johnny that he had been previously so proud of. Another thing I observed about Brandon was his attitude. Where once he was self-confident and cocky, he now was skittish and nervous. At home, the situation was changing too. Beth was rapidly gaining weight. Previously, my estimate was she was 130 to 135 pounds. By Thursday, she looked about 170. There was little curve to her. Her waist was increasing. She begged me to reverse the process, but I acted like I did not know what she was talking about. She also begged me to stay with her. She promised me she would be mine forever. But looking at her disgusted me. Finally, her physical appearance was beginning to match the ugliness that her personality could be. I called my lawyer Abraham Green and asked that she be served at Edge Fitness where I knew she would be on Saturday. Dina's condition stabilized for a while, but she was going downhill. I spent time with her all week, and on Saturday, I spent most of the day with her. She slept for much of the time, and I would just sit and hold her hand. I told her about all that had happened with Josh, Brandon, and Beth. She mostly lay still with her eyes closed while I talked. Finally, I told her that I was becoming a little concerned about all her makings and the brew they could make. I told her I didn't think I would use it much again. With a slight nod, eyes closed, she acknowledged. I feel like I got the proper revenge, I told Dina, but I wasn't happy. I thought she was asleep when I said this, but I saw her eyelids open part way and she was trying to speak. I heard her say something, but it came out as a whisper. "Dini, what?" I asked. In a barely audible voice, I thought she said, "Soon Shadia." She then slumped back to sleep. About this time, my phone started blowing up. Beth must have gotten served. Within the service was a restraining order. She had 24 hours to remove her belongings. The document also requested that she surrender her wedding ring. To avoid Beth, I spent Saturday night at my parents'. I explained to them about our marriage ending. They asked the typical questions. Why? Would counseling work? And on and on. I assured them this relationship no longer had life. Sunday, after the 24 hours were up, I returned home. The house was trashed, her stuff was gone, and no wedding ring was left. My phone began to ring. It was my mom. "Nicholas, come quick, it's Aunt Dina. She's asking for you. I don't think she has much time left." I got there, and a small group of relatives crowded her cramped home. Breathlessly, she shooed them away and asked for me. I sat and held her hand as the others drifted out. Barely a whisper, she spoke, "Nico, it is my time." I didn't know what to say. I just sat with her. Time went by. She seemed asleep. She stirred one last time and said, "Take care of Shadia." For a moment, those beautiful eyes met mine and then shut. I squeezed her hand in acknowledgement. Her hand slowly lost its warmth, and I saw that she was no longer breathing. Dina was gone. Over the next few weeks, my life was sad. I missed Dina, and I missed the memory of the good Beth. I was never tempted to get back with her. Her cheating and self-absorption left me with such a negative impression. The divorce was slowly proceeding. Beth had retained a lawyer, and he and Abe were working out details. No word on the ring yet. I continued to go to Edge Fitness. The brew had done its job with Josh. The blonde hair fell out in patches so badly he now shaved it completely. It looked odd. His once shiny white teeth had discolored, and at least one was now missing. The physique looked gone too. He normally wore shapeless clothes, so I couldn't be sure. He avoided me when I was there. Brandon disappeared, or more likely quit Edge and moved on. I had a pretty good feeling his brew worked too. It had been used before on Dina's childhood neighbor, and it had worked then. Still, I was lonely. There was a definite void in my life. Life went on, but there was little joy in revenge, I discovered. I even skipped my parents' Saturday night gatherings for a few weeks in a row. Finally, as this particular Saturday approached, my mom insisted I come. There were some people from Romania that my parents were hosting, and she asked for my attendance. Our church occasionally would accommodate small groups of people, including students from Romania, when they would travel to the US. My mom would open our house up for our Saturday night gatherings to include the Romanians. I could tell it was a large group tonight. I wandered in and hugged and shook hands with the people I knew. I think these events reminded me of the loss of Aunt Dina, and perhaps that is why I had avoided them lately. It was too painful. My mother was in her element, being the gracious hostess, multitasking, and directing people left and right. She loved this kind of chaos. All of a sudden, she sees me. "Nicholas!" She grabs me by the back of my shirt and yanks. "See the group over there. See if you can get them beverages." I walk over to a huddled group of perhaps 10 people in a corner of the living room. I'm about to ask them what they want when I see her. I freeze. I'm speechless as she stares back at me. She has Dina's beautiful eyes. Do you remember in The Godfather when Michael Corleone is hit by the lightning bolt? That's what happened to me. Ignoring all the others, not breaking eye contact, I walk directly to her and reach out my hand to introduce myself. "Nicholas Stoika," I say as I take her hand. "I am Shadia," she tells me with a knowing smile. Eventually, I break eye contact and appraise the rest of her. Dark black hair and olive skin. Thin and lean with beautiful legs. We spend the evening together, and it's like we are in our own cocoon of privacy. The rest of the party is just background noise. I only have eyes for Shadia. Before I know it, the party is over and Shadia's group is urging her it is time to leave. I get her information and we make plans for the next day. That night as I slept, I had a strange dream. In it, Dina was telling me a story. Here's what I remember. When I was a teenager in Romania, living with the Stoikas, I go to dance on Saturday nights in the town. I meet a man, really just a boy. His name is Luca. We dance and have good time. He asks if I come back next Saturday. I tell him I will try. This time we do not dance. We go to quiet place. We love. He is my first time love. He say he see me next Saturday. Next Saturday, no Luca. The next week, same. I ask, no one know where Luca go. I never see him again. I learn I have his child in me. I tell Mrs. Stoika. She say it will be fine. I will raise child by myself. When time to deliver, I have problem. Baby is born, but she does not live. Doctors take my little girl. She lived just 5 minutes. I name her Shadia. That was what I remembered of the dream. It was like Dina was sitting in my room talking to me. From that Sunday on, Shadia and I were together. I knew she was due to leave soon, and all week long we made arrangements for her to stay. After the rest of the Romanians left, Shadia stayed with my parents. In fact, she stayed in Dina's house. From then on, I spent all my time with Shadia. I knew that Shadia and I were meant to be together forever. I was going to take care of Shadia just as I promised Aunt Dina. My life with Shadia was wonderful. I loved her, and she loved me, even more if that was possible. But that is a different story. I would have liked to say I never used Dina's makings again, but I did. Twice. One day Abe called me and said we were to have a final conference Tuesday at 3 p.m. He informed me that Beth and her attorney would be there. When I asked about the ring, he said to not be optimistic. Before the conference, I made a quick stop at Dina's, surprising Shadia. She watched me, and then I left. I was shocked at Beth's appearance when I saw her. If she was under 200 pounds, I would be surprised. She was giving me the evil eye the entire time. We went through all the preliminary matters, and then Beth's lawyer produced a document signed by a judge granting possession of the ring to Beth. I was prepared for that. Beth, I say, may I just see my grandfather's stone one last time? I ask. I guess, she says and holds out her hand with the ring across the conference table for me to see. She has a smug look on her face as if to say, at least I got the ring. I quickly say, here, let me polish it for you. And before she knows what's happening, out of my pocket is a cloth with an herbally smell that I rub on the stone. Too late. She yanks her hand back, calls me an a-hole, and leaves the room. Both lawyers are looking at each other like, what the hell just happened? I just shake my head with a small smile. I have no idea. I say, oh, and the one other time call me superficial, but if you remember how I first described Shadia, she looks almost exactly like that now. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.